Night Captain Jebediah Jeb Wheatley's quantum spurs left faint blue trails along the panoramic observation deck as he supervised the morning shift change. From this vantage point, 200 levels above the main production hangars, he could see the true scale of Wheatley Orbital Shipworks, a massive rotating structure that had been the pride of New Topeka for 3 generations. At 28, Jeb was among the youngest Texas Knights to hold command rank, and certainly the only one whose primary duty involved industrial production rather than frontier defense or combat operations. His quantum spurs hummed softly as he moved along the reinforced transparasteel windows, their blue energy patterns reflecting his calm, methodical thought processes, rather than the combat-ready flares that characterized frontline knights. He was fully suited in his work gear, complete with the integrated helmet that incorporated his family's traditional Stetson design into its upper portion. The combination of knight armor and production supervisor equipment gave him a distinctive silhouette that workers throughout the shipyard recognized instantly. Years of military training had made wearing the full suit second nature to him. Without it, he felt strangely exposed on the production floor. "Morning, sir," called Ethan Crawford, the night shift supervisor, offering a data pad with the overnight production reports. Hangar 7 made excellent progress on the Remembrance. Hull plating sequence completed 12 hours ahead of schedule. Jeb nodded with satisfaction, reviewing the figures as his helmet's heads-up display automatically highlighted key metrics. "Good work, Ethan. Please convey my compliments to the night crew." He scrolled through the remaining reports, his trained eye catching details that would escape most observers. "I see we had another minor fluctuation in the quantum forge alignment on Deck 14. "Yes, sir. Already addressed. Chief Engineer Victory implemented the calibration protocol you developed last quarter. Stabilization achieved within 20 minutes. Jeb made a mental note to review the incident logs personally. The quantum forges were the heart of what made his shipyard special, the only civilian-operated facility authorized to produce the specialized matrices that night vessels required. The technology was classified, controlled, and temperamental, requiring both engineering expertise and the intuitive understanding that only a knight could provide. "Thank you, Ethan. Get some rest. Sarah mentioned you've been pulling double shifts this week." Crawford looked momentarily surprised that the shipyard's owner and commanding officer was aware of his schedule, but he nodded gratefully. "Just until the propulsion team gets caught up on the Defiance. Should be back to normal rotation by next week." As Crawford departed, Jeb turned his attention back to the vast production hangars visible below. Each was a marvel of engineering, 200 meters tall, 500 meters wide, and extending 10 kilometers in length. Massive shield generators maintained atmospheric integrity while allowing ships and materials to pass through specifically calibrated entry points. Currently, 6 of the 8 primary hangars were occupied with night cruisers in various stages of completion. The distinctive dusty white hulls of these vessels made them appear almost ghost-like under the hangar lighting, a deliberate design choice that reduced their sensor profile during operations. Unlike the heavily armed warships of conventional fleets, night vessels kept their weapons systems elegantly concealed beneath retractable hull segments, maintaining sleek profiles until combat necessitated otherwise. 22 levels of internal structure defined each cruiser, with command and control centers positioned in the upper levels, another night-specific design element that diverged from standard military architecture. Jeb had personally refined several aspects of this design over the past 5 years, balancing tradition with innovation in ways that had earned both respect and occasional resistance from night command. His comm unit chimed softly, displaying a message from his wife, Abigail. "The kids are off to school. Thomas asked if you'll be home for dinner tonight. Something about showing you his science project. Let me know if I should tell him yes or if it's another late night at the forge." Jeb smiled behind his helmet visor, typing a quick response. "Wouldn't miss it. Should be home by 1800 unless something catastrophic happens with the Vigilance's quantum core installation. Love you." The dual existence of family life and night responsibilities was a balance few of his colleagues had to manage. Most active knights lived primarily among their brothers and sisters in arms, serving on the frontier or at strategic installations. But the Wheatley family had always done things differently, ever since his grandfather had convinced Knight Command that privately operated shipyards could produce vessels of equal quality at greater efficiency than military facilities. 3 generations later, Wheatley Orbital Shipworks had grown from a modest repair facility to the premier manufacturer of Knight vessels in human space. The family tradition of innovation combined with respect for Knight protocols had created something unique. A hybrid space where 120,000 civilian workers, 500 security personnel, and approximately 50 stationed Knights cooperated in building the most advanced vessels in the Texas Knight fleet. Jeb's quantum spurs left thoughtful blue patterns as he made his way toward the executive transport tube that would take him down to the main production levels. Today's schedule included inspecting the quantum core installation on the Vigilance, reviewing final hull integrity tests on the Remembrance, and meeting with the design team about proposed modifications to the Defiance's sensor array. But first, breakfast with his senior staff, another Wheatley tradition that maintained the delicate balance between military precision and family-owned business values. The executive dining room occupied a corner of the administrative level, offering views of both the sprawling shipyard and the blue-green curve of New Topeka below. As Jeb entered, conversations paused momentarily as the assembled department heads acknowledged his arrival with respectful nods. Though only 28, his dual authority as both shipyard owner and Knight captain had long since overcome any questions about his leadership capability. Many of the staff had initially been surprised by his habit of remaining fully suited during meetings and meals, his helmet designed to partially retract around the jaw area to allow eating while maintaining the protection and systems integration of full gear. But they'd grown accustomed to it. Some even admitted they found it reassuring. The workers throughout the shipyard had come to see his suited presence as a sign of commitment and shared purpose. "Good morning, everyone," he greeted them, taking his customary seat at the head of the table. His quantum spurs left faint trails as he settled into the chair, a subtle reminder of his Knight status among the primarily civilian leadership team. "Morning, Jeb," responded Chief Engineer Victory, the most senior staff member present. Her 20 years at the shipyard predated even Jeb's father's leadership. "We were just discussing the quantum resonance issues in the Vigilance core housing." Jeb nodded, his helmet partially retracting to allow him to accept a mug of coffee. "I saw the overnight reports. What's your assessment?" "Nothing critical," Victory assured him, "but unusual enough to warrant your personal attention. The matrices are showing harmonic patterns we haven't seen before. Could be nothing, or could be something significant," Jeb finished, understanding immediately. Quantum technology, especially the specialized matrices used in Knight vessels, occasionally exhibited unexpected behaviors that defied standard engineering analysis. It was one of the reasons Knight Command insisted on having actual Knights involved in production oversight. Their unique training and neural connection to quantum technology often allowed them to perceive patterns that even the most sophisticated diagnostic equipment missed. "I'll examine it personally after breakfast," he promised, turning his attention to the shipyard's operations director. "Doug, how are we looking on production timelines for the quarter?" Doug Whitehead, a former Colonial Navy logistics officer who had joined the shipyard 5 years ago, pulled up a holographic projection above the center of the table. "We're ahead of schedule on the Remembrance and the Vigilance. The Defiance is running approximately 72 hours behind projected completion due to the sensor array modifications requested by Knight Command." The projection showed 6 Knight cruisers in various stages of completion, each represented by a detailed model with color-coded sections indicating work progress. "And material supplies?" Jeb inquired, studying the projection. "Quantum-resonant alloys from the Dodson 4 facility arrived yesterday, 8% higher quality than minimum specifications. Propulsion components from Wong Industries are scheduled for delivery tomorrow. Everything else is either on hand or within expected delivery windows. Jeb nodded with satisfaction. The logistics of shipbuilding on this scale were staggering. Each night cruiser required materials from dozens of specialized facilities across multiple star systems, all coordinated to arrive in precise sequences. Excellent. And how are our people doing? Any concerns I should be aware of? This question, asked at every morning meeting, reflected the Wheatley family philosophy that had built the shipyard's reputation. Ships were important, schedules were important, but the 120,000 workers who turned designs into reality were the true foundation of their success. Medical reports routine illness levels for the season, reported the shipyard's chief medical officer. The new recreation facilities on Habitat Ring 3 are showing positive impact on stress indicators among the engineering divisions. Oh, and there's been a 17% increase in applications for the apprenticeship program since your presentation at New Topeka University last month. Jeb smiled behind his visor at this last item. Recruiting the next generation of shipbuilders had always been a personal priority, particularly encouraging young people from New Topeka's agricultural communities to consider careers in space-based industries. Good to hear. Any security concerns, Major Williams? Major Taylor Williams commanded the shipyard's security force, 500 highly trained personnel responsible for protecting both classified night technology and the overall safety of the station. Though technically a civilian contractor rather than military, he ran his department with precision that would impress any colonial defense officer. Nothing significant, sir. Routine customs inspections identified 3 instances of prohibited personal items among new contractor personnel, all confiscated and documented per protocol. Perimeter sensors and patrol patterns operating at optimal efficiency. The briefing continued in this methodical fashion, each department head reporting status and concerns in turn. Unlike the command briefings Jeb had witnessed on frontline night vessels, these sessions balanced military precision with civilian practicality, focusing on production efficiency and personnel welfare alongside security protocols. As the meeting concluded, Jeb rose from his seat, his quantum spurs leaving thoughtful blue trails across the floor. His helmet automatically sealed back to full protection mode as he prepared to enter the production areas. Thank you all. I'll be in Hangar 4 if anyone needs me. Want to personally inspect that quantum resonance issue before signing off on the next phase of the Vigilance's construction? As his staff dispersed to their respective duties, Jeb paused to look out at New Topeka below, the blue-green world where his family had lived for 4 generations, where his wife had grown up, and where his 3 children were currently in school, unaware that their father was simultaneously building the vessels that protected their future, while ensuring he made it home for dinner to see science projects and hear about school days. It was a balance unique among knights, but one that the Wheatley family had maintained for generations. And as his quantum spurs hummed with quiet purpose, Jeb couldn't imagine serving any other way. The transport tube descended rapidly through the central axis of the shipyard, its transparent steel walls offering glimpses of the vast structure's interior workings. Engineering decks, residential areas, supply warehouses, and manufacturing zones flashed by as Jeb made his way toward Hangar 4, where the Vigilance awaited his inspection. His quantum spurs left contemplative patterns as he mentally reviewed what he knew about the resonance anomalies in the ship's core housing. Unusual harmonic patterns in quantum matrices could indicate anything from minor calibration issues to fundamental instabilities in the crystalline structure. Given that the Vigilance was scheduled to join the Frontier Defense Fleet within 3 months, any potential issues needed addressing immediately. The tube slowed as it approached hangar level, coming to a smooth stop at a security checkpoint. 2 guards in Wheatley Shipworks uniforms straightened as the doors opened, recognizing their commander immediately. The fully suited knight was an unmistakable figure. Workers often commented that seeing Knight Captain Wheatley in his integrated Stetson helmet gave them confidence that someone with both authority and expertise was overseeing their efforts. "Good morning, sir," the senior guard greeted him, helmet sensors briefly scanning Jeb's quantum spurs, a security protocol that verified his Knight identity more reliably than any identification card. "Chief Engineer Victory mentioned you'd be coming down to inspect the vigilance." "That's right. Has there been any change in the resonance patterns since the last report?" "Not according to the monitoring station, sir. Readings have remained consistent for the past 6 hours." Jeb nodded, proceeding through the checkpoint into the vast expanse of Hangar 4. The sheer scale of the space always impressed him, no matter how many times he entered. 200 meters high, 500 meters wide, extending 10 kilometers in length. Shield generators maintained atmospheric integrity while allowing the massive hangar doors to open when necessary, permitting completed vessels to depart or raw materials to arrive. The Vigilance dominated the central portion of the hangar, its dusty white hull gleaming under the industrial lighting. At 1,200 meters in length, the night cruiser was both elegant and imposing, its sleek profile concealing weapon systems and defensive capabilities that could be deployed within seconds when needed. Workers in environment suits moved across its surface like tiny insects, finalizing hull plate installations and external sensor alignment. Heavy lifting drones transported materials between construction zones, their movements choreographed by the shipyard's central control systems to prevent collisions in the busy space. Jeb made his way toward the temporary access lift that would take him into the ship's interior. His presence didn't go unnoticed. Workers paused to acknowledge him as he passed, respect evident in their gestures, not just for his position as their employer, but for the blue trails his quantum spurs left and the distinctive silhouette of his Knight armor with its integrated Stetson helmet, a visible reminder of his dual identity as Knight and shipyard owner. "Knight Captain Wheatley," a voice called from near the lift. Knight Lieutenant Roger Hogg, one of the 50 Knights stationed at the shipyard, approached with a formal salute. "I've been monitoring the quantum core since the anomaly was first detected." Jeb returned the salute with equal formality. Though he ran the shipyard as a civilian operation in many respects, proper military protocol was always observed between Knights. "Lieutenant, what's your assessment?" "Unusual but not immediately concerning," Hogg replied as they entered the lift together. "The harmonic patterns appear to be forming nested resonance loops rather than the standard linear sequences we typically see during initialization." As the lift carried them upward into the vessel's interior structure, Hogg continued his report, detailing the diagnostic measures already attempted and the results observed. His quantum spurs left sharper, more precisely defined trails than Jeb's, characteristic of Knights whose training had focused on tactical operations rather than technical specialization. They exited on Deck 8, proceeding through partially completed corridors toward the quantum core housing at the center of the vessel. Unlike conventional starships, which typically placed engines and power generation systems in the aft sections, Knight cruisers distributed quantum technology throughout a central spine, with the primary core housing situated midship for optimal protection. The core chamber itself was a marvel of engineering. A spherical space 50 meters in diameter, currently filled with specialized equipment and technical personnel. At its center, suspended within multiple containment fields, floated the quantum core itself, a crystalline structure approximately 2 meters in diameter that glowed with subtle blue-white energy. "All personnel stand by for night inspection," announced the chamber's supervisor upon their arrival. The technicians paused in their work, moving to designated positions along the chamber's perimeter while maintaining their monitoring duties. Several nodded appreciatively at seeing their boss in full gear. Jeb's insistence on wearing his complete suit and helmet when in production areas had become something of a touchstone for the workers, who saw it as evidence that he took their safety and protocols as seriously as his own. Jeb approached the central platform, his quantum spurs responding to the concentrated quantum energy with brighter trails than usual. He could feel the resonance immediately, a subtle vibration that ordinary humans would never detect, but that registered clearly to his night-enhanced senses. "Display current harmonic patterns," he instructed the monitoring system. A holographic representation appeared above the core, showing wave-like patterns of energy flowing through the crystalline matrix. To an untrained observer, they would appear random and chaotic, but Jeb's experienced eye immediately recognized both the standard operational harmonics and the anomalous patterns Hogg had described. "There," he indicated, pointing to a recurring spiral formation within the broader energy flow. "That's not a standard initialization pattern." "Exactly," Hogg confirmed. "It's maintaining stable periodicity but doesn't match any patterns in our reference database." Jeb studied the anomaly thoughtfully, his quantum spurs leaving contemplative trails as he circled the core housing. After several moments of observation, he activated his helmet's specialized diagnostic systems, his Stetson-shaped upper section briefly illuminating with additional sensor arrays as he drew closer to the containment field. "Sir?" Hogg questioned, a note of concern in his voice. "It's all right, Lieutenant. I'm going to attempt direct resonance." Direct resonance was a technique unique to Knights, with technical specialization, using their own quantum spurs to temporarily synchronize with a ship's quantum systems for diagnostic purposes. It carried minimal risk with properly maintained equipment, but required both technical expertise and the neural conditioning that only Knights received. The chamber's technicians watched with fascination as Jeb stepped onto the central platform, now just meters from the suspended core. His quantum spurs began to pulse in rhythmic patterns, their blue energy intensifying as he established preliminary synchronization. "Reducing containment field intensity to level 3, he instructed the monitoring team. "Maintain safety protocols." As the innermost containment field diminished, Jeb closed his eyes behind his helmet visor, focusing his awareness on the quantum resonance emanating from the core. His spurs responded automatically, their matrices adjusting to match the core's frequency, creating a temporary bridge between his neural patterns and the ship's developing consciousness. For several minutes he remained motionless, perceiving the quantum patterns directly rather than through instrumentation. The chamber remained silent, the technical team watching readings fluctuate on their monitors as Jeb communicated with the ship's core in a language of pure quantum resonance. Finally, his helmet's displays lit up with new data as his spurs returned to their normal energy level. "It's not a malfunction," he announced, stepping back from the platform. "The core is developing a tertiary resonance pattern. It's unusual, but potentially beneficial." "Tertiary resonance?" Hogg repeated, his expression reflecting both professional curiosity and relief that no serious problem had been identified. "I didn't think that was possible in initial configuration stages." "Neither did I," Jeb admitted, his helmet's displays continuing to process the data he'd gathered during direct resonance. "It's something I've only seen in cores that have been actively deployed for years, a kind of maturation process that normally develops through extended use." He turned to the chamber supervisor. "Continue monitoring, but don't attempt to correct or modify the pattern. I believe the Vigilance is simply developing her personality a bit ahead of schedule." This explanation, which might have sounded bizarre in a conventional shipyard, was accepted with understanding nods by the technical team. Night vessels were known to develop unique operational characteristics over time, subtleties in their quantum systems that reflected both their construction and their service experiences. These personalities, as shipbuilders called them, were one reason why Knights formed such strong bonds with specific vessels. "I'll update the construction logs and notify Knight Command," Hogg offered as they exited the chamber. "This might be worth documenting for future reference." "Good idea," Jeb agreed. "And add a note that we should monitor for similar developments in the Remembrance and Defiance. If one core is exhibiting accelerated maturation, others from the same production batch might follow suit." As they made their way back through the partially completed corridors, Jeb found himself reflecting on the uniqueness of Knight vessel construction. Unlike conventional military ships, which were essentially sophisticated machines designed to execute specific functions, Knight cruisers incorporated quantum technology that blurred the line between equipment and organism. Each vessel developed subtle variations in operation over time, responding to both their night operators and their service experiences in ways that defied standard engineering expectations. This was why Night Command insisted on having knights involved in the construction process, not just for security reasons, but because only those with quantum spurs could truly perceive and interact with the developing personalities of these remarkable vessels. "Will this affect the delivery schedule?" Hogg asked as they reached the exterior access lift. Jeb shook his head, his Stetson helmet gleaming under the hangar lights. "No reason it should. We'll maintain regular monitoring, but early personality development isn't a concern, just unexpected." He checked the time display on his helmet's heads-up display. "I need to inspect the remembrance next. Would you mind overseeing the continued diagnoses here?" "Of course, sir," Hogg replied with a formal nod. "I'll forward hourly updates to your personal console." As they parted ways, Jeb's quantum spurs left thoughtful blue patterns across the deck plating. The Vigilance was already showing unique characteristics before even leaving the shipyard, a good sign for her future performance, but also a reminder of how much remained unknown about quantum technology even after generations of night service. His comm unit chimed with a message from Abigail. Thomas's science project involves quantum resonance visualization. Says he wants to see what Dad sees when working with the ships. Should I be concerned he's following the family business already? Jeb smiled behind his helmet visor, typing a quick response. Like father, like son. Tell him I'm looking forward to his demonstration tonight. Maybe he'll discover something we've all missed. Pocketing the comm unit, he made his way toward Hangar 6, where the Remembrance awaited his inspection. Family traditions ran deep in the Wheatley lineage, from his grandfather's pioneering work establishing the shipyard to his own marriage to Abigail, herself the daughter of a night engineer. Now it seemed his eldest son was showing interest in quantum technology as well. For a moment, Jeb wondered if Thomas would someday wear quantum spurs of his own, joining the rare brotherhood of Texas Knights, or if he would follow the civilian side of the family tradition, applying his intelligence to shipbuilding innovation without formal night training. Either path would carry forward the Wheatley legacy of service, and as his quantum spurs left blue trails behind him through the cavernous hangar, Jeb found himself perfectly content with either possibility. The residential ring of Wheatley Orbital Shipworks rotated at precisely the speed necessary to create Earth-standard gravity, its wide central promenade designed to mimic the open spaces of New Topeka below. Hydroponic gardens, recreation areas, and community gathering spaces created the illusion of planet-side living despite being situated in orbit. Jeb's quantum spurs left tired but satisfied trails as he made his way home after a 14-hour workday. He had finally removed his work suit and helmet upon entering the residential section, following decontamination protocols that were standard for anyone transitioning from production areas to living quarters. Even after all these years, he still felt a momentary sense of vulnerability without his gear, an ingrained response from his military training that had only intensified during his years overseeing the high-security shipyard. The Wheatley family residence occupied a corner section of the executive residential area, not ostentatious by core world standards, but spacious by shipyard living conditions. As the door recognized his approach and slid open, the sounds and smells of home immediately washed away the day's technical concerns. "Dad's home," came 8-year-old Thomas's excited voice from somewhere inside, followed by the patter of running feet. Jeb barely had time to set down his personal data pad before his eldest son barreled into him with enthusiastic affection. Thomas's eyes immediately dropped to the quantum spurs on his father's boots, watching with fascination as they left their characteristic blue trails. "Did they do anything cool today?" Thomas asked, as he did almost every evening, endlessly fascinated by the quantum technology that set knights apart from ordinary humans. "Just their usual job," Jeb replied with a smile, ruffling his son's hair, "though they helped me diagnose an unusual quantum resonance pattern in the Vigilance's core." Thomas's eyes widened. "Like in my science project? Can I show you? I've got it all set up in my room. Dinner first." came Abigail's voice as she emerged from the kitchen area, their 4-year-old daughter Emma perched on her hip. "Your father's been working all day and deserves a proper meal before science demonstrations." Jeb crossed the room to kiss his wife, then accepted Emma's enthusiastic hug. "Where's Michael?" he asked, noting the absence of their middle child. "Final soccer practice before tomorrow's tournament," Abigail explained. "Addison's mom is bringing him home in about 20 minutes. The normality of this domestic scene stood in stark contrast to the highly technical, security-conscious environment Jeb had navigated all day. Yet this duality had been the foundation of the Wheatley family business for generations, building the vessels that defended human space while maintaining the family connections that gave that defense meaning. "So what was this resonance anomaly?" Abigail asked as they moved to the dining area, demonstrating the technical understanding that came from growing up as the daughter of a night engineer. "Anything concerning?" "Quite the opposite," Jeb explained, settling into his chair as Thomas eagerly took the seat beside him. "The vigilance is developing tertiary resonance patterns already, something we usually don't see until a vessel has been in service for years." Abigail raised an eyebrow, immediately grasping the significance. "Early personality development. That's fascinating. Did you notify command?" "And Hogg is handling the formal documentation. I suspect they'll want to assign a knight with compatible neural patterns when she's ready for commissioning." This conversation, casual discussion of highly classified quantum technology over dinner, was possible only because Abigail held appropriate security clearances herself, having worked as a quantum systems analyst before taking a teaching position at the shipyard's education center after Thomas's birth. "Can ships really have personalities, Dad?" Thomas asked, his young mind grappling with concepts most adults never encountered. Jeb considered how to explain this complex reality to an 8-year-old. "Not like people do," he said carefully. "But each night vessel develops unique operational patterns over time. The quantum matrices at their core learn and adapt from their experiences, just like you learn from yours." "Is that why you can talk to them with your spurs?" Thomas pressed, pointing to Jeb's boots where the quantum technology continued to emit faint blue trails even at rest. "In a manner of speaking," Jeb acknowledged. "The quantum spurs help knights interface with ship systems in ways that go beyond standard controls. It's a kind of direct communication." Thomas nodded seriously, processing this information with the intensity only children can muster. "That's what my science project shows. The patterns change when you're thinking different things." Before Jeb could inquire further about this intriguing statement, the door chimed and slid open to admit 12-year-old Michael, still in his soccer uniform and chattering excitedly about practice as he entered. The conversation shifted to tournament strategies and school events as the family settled into their evening meal. Jeb listened to his children's stories with the same focused attention he gave to engineering reports, appreciating this grounding in ordinary family life that many of his night colleagues lacked. After dinner, as Abigail supervised Emma's bath time and Michael tackled homework, Jeb was led ceremoniously to Thomas's room to observe the much-anticipated science project. "I've been working on it for 2 weeks," Thomas explained proudly, revealing a surprisingly sophisticated setup on his desk. A small quantum resonance scanner, clearly borrowed from Abigail's teaching supplies, had been modified with additional sensors and a holographic display unit. "Mom helped with the calibration, but I did all the programming myself." "Impressive," Jeb acknowledged, genuinely surprised by the complexity of the arrangement. "What exactly does it do?" "It visualizes quantum patterns," Thomas announced with infectious enthusiasm. "Like this." He activated the device, which immediately produced a holographic representation of swirling energy patterns above the scanner. "These are the ambient quantum fluctuations in the room, but watch what happens when you stand closer." As Jeb moved toward the scanner, the holographic patterns shifted dramatically, organizing into more coherent structures that pulsed in rhythmic sequences. "See?" Thomas exclaimed. "Your spurs change the patterns. And look, He pressed another control and the display split into two sections. The top shows the direct quantum emissions from your spurs, but the bottom shows how they're influencing the ambient field. Mom says it's like quantum resonance echo. Jeb stared at the display with genuine amazement. What Thomas had created was essentially a simplified version of the diagnostic equipment used in night training facilities. Tools that help new recruits visualize the quantum effects they were learning to control. "Thomas, this is extraordinary," he said, watching the patterns shift as he moved. "Did you come up with this idea entirely on your own?" His son nodded eagerly. "I wanted to see what you see when you're working with the ships. Mom said I couldn't access the real shipyard equipment, but she helped me figure out how to build something similar." He hesitated, suddenly looking uncertain. Is it okay? I know some night stuff is secret." Jeb knelt to meet his son at eye level, resting a hand on his shoulder. "It's more than okay. It's brilliant. You've built a quantum visualization system that some engineering students would struggle to design." He studied the display again, genuinely impressed by both the concept and execution. "Have you thought about what other applications this might have?" Thomas's expression brightened at his father's approval. "I was thinking maybe it could help in engineering training. Mom says lots of people have trouble understanding quantum resonance because they can't perceive it directly like knights can. But with something like this, they could at least see the patterns." The perceptiveness of this observation struck Jeb forcefully. His own grandfather had often spoken about the challenges of bridging the gap between night perception and civilian understanding when establishing the shipyard. Visualization tools had been critical to that process, allowing non-night engineers to collaborate effectively with their night counterparts. "I think you might be onto something important," Jeb said thoughtfully. "Would you be willing to show this to Chief Engineer Victory? She might have some insights on how we could develop this concept further." Thomas's eyes widened. "You mean for the actual shipyard? Really?" "Really," Jeb confirmed. "Innovation comes from unexpected places, and what you've built here demonstrates exactly the kind of thinking we need." His quantum spurs left proud blue trails as he stood. "The Wheatley tradition continues, it seems." The unrestrained joy on Thomas's face was worth more than any professional accomplishment Jeb had experienced. As his son eagerly began explaining the finer technical details of his creation, Jeb found himself reflecting on the unique legacy his family had built. Not just constructing the vessels that defended human space, but nurturing the ingenuity and passion that drove continuous improvement. Later that evening, after the children were in bed, Jeb found Abigail in their small home office, reviewing student evaluations from her quantum theory class at the shipyard's education center. "Thomas's project is remarkable," he said, settling into the chair beside her desk. His quantum spurs left tired but content patterns across the floor. "Did you know he was creating something that sophisticated?" Abigail smiled, setting aside her work. "I provided some basic guidance, but the concept was entirely his. He's been observing your spurs since he was old enough to notice them, trying to understand what you perceive that others don't." She paused, studying Jeb's expression. "It raises questions about his future." The unspoken implication hung between them, whether Thomas might someday be evaluated for night selection, a process that identified candidates with specific neural patterns compatible with quantum spur technology. Such selections typically occurred in late adolescence, with candidates identified through both testing and observation. "It's far too early to speculate," Jeb said carefully. "And you know as well as I do that aptitude for understanding quantum theory doesn't necessarily correlate with suitability for night selection." Abigail nodded, though her expression suggested she had already given this considerable thought. "Your grandfather wasn't selected, yet he revolutionized night vessel construction. Your father was selected but chose to focus on shipyard operations rather than front-line service. Different paths, same legacy." "Exactly," Jeb agreed, reaching for her hand. "Whatever path Thomas, or any of our children, might ultimately take, the Wheatley tradition offers plenty of room for their unique contributions." She squeezed his hand, her expression softening. "Speaking of contributions, How did the inspection of the Vigilance actually go? You seemed intrigued by what you found. This seamless shift between parenting concerns and technical discussion exemplified their partnership. Both equally invested in family and the shipyard's success. Both fluent in the specialized language of quantum engineering that defined their professional lives. Jeb described the unusual resonance patterns in more detail, explaining both the technical implications and his intuitive sense about the vessel's accelerated development. Abigail listened with the keen understanding of someone who had studied quantum theory at the highest levels, occasionally asking precisely the right questions to help clarify his thinking. It almost sounds like the core is anticipating deployment patterns, she observed when he had finished, as if it's preparing for specific operational parameters before they've been formally established. That's exactly what it felt like during direct resonance, Jeb confirmed, impressed as always by her insightfulness. The question is whether this is unique to the Vigilance or indicative of something in our current production processes that's accelerating matrix development. Abigail considered this. Have you compared the crystalline structure to previous batches or examined the quantum forging parameters? Not yet. That's tomorrow's project. He checked the time display on his comm unit, speaking of which, I should probably get some rest. Morning briefing comes early, and I'll need to suit up and do a full systems check before heading to the production levels. As they prepared for bed, the quiet domesticity of their evening routine contrasted sharply with the massive industrial operation continuing around the clock beyond their walls. Throughout the shipyard, shifts changed, construction proceeded, and the great vessels that would soon join the night fleet took shape, meter by careful meter. Yet for Jeb, this balance had always been the true strength of the Wheatley approach, understanding that the ships they built served ultimately to protect homes and families like their own across human space. His grandfather had established that philosophy from the beginning. They were not merely constructing vessels, but crafting shields for humanity's future. As dawn cycle began in the residential ring, Jeb was already awake, performing his morning routine with military precision. His night training had ingrained habits that carried over into civilian life. Efficiency of movement, thorough preparation, constant awareness of his surroundings. Even simple acts like showering and dressing were executed with methodical care. Abigail stirred as he sat on the edge of the bed to pull on his boots, the quantum spurs immediately activating and leaving faint blue trails across the floor. "Early start?" she murmured, propping herself up on one elbow. "Need to follow up on that resonance pattern in the Vigilance," he explained, his voice soft to avoid waking the children. "Want to run a comparative analysis against our previous core installations before the morning briefing?" She nodded, understanding the technical necessity without requiring elaboration. "Thomas was still talking about your reaction to his project when I tucked him in. You made quite an impression." Jeb smiled. "Kid's got a natural talent for quantum visualization. Reminds me of your father's approach to core diagnostics." "The Wheatley-Morris engineering genes combining nicely," she agreed, naming her own family's tradition of night engineering specialists. "Don't forget Michael's tournament is at 1600. He really wants you there." "Wouldn't miss it. I've already blocked the schedule and arranged for Lieutenant Hogg to cover the afternoon inspections." He leaned over to kiss her goodbye. "Give the kids my love when they wake up." Abigail caught his hand before he could rise. "You're a good father, Jeb. The kids don't care that you build ships that defend humanity. They just care that you come home and see their science projects and soccer games." The simple observation carried weight beyond its words, a reminder of the balance he worked daily to maintain. "That's why we build them," he replied softly. "So everyone's children can have science projects and soccer games without fear." 30 minutes later, Jeb was fully suited in his work gear, the Stetson helmet locked into place as he entered his private office in the administrative section. The room reflected both his military training and family heritage, organized with precise efficiency but decorated with touches of Wheatley history. Scale models of ships built by 3 generations of his family lined one wall, while another displayed family photographs alongside night commendations. Computer, access core installation records for night vessels completed in the past 5 years, he instructed as he settled at his desk. Compare quantum resonance patterns during initial matrix activation with particular attention to tertiary harmonic development. The holographic display lit up with technical data, quantum matrices visualized as intricate 3-dimensional patterns that shifted and evolved according to the timestamps associated with each vessel. Jeb's quantum spurs left thoughtful trails as he manipulated the display, zooming in on particular instances and cross-referencing with Night Command's classified database of operational vessels. Interesting, he murmured after an hour of detailed analysis. The Vigilance wasn't entirely unique in its early personality development. 3 other vessels over the past 5 years had shown similar tendencies, though none quite as pronounced. All had gone on to distinguished service records, with night pilots reporting unusually intuitive response patterns in their quantum systems. Further investigation revealed a subtle connection. All 4 vessels, including the Vigilance, had received their primary crystalline matrices from the same specialized forge on Dodson 4, though from different production batches separated by years. Captain Wheatley, his comm system announced, Chief Engineer Victory requests your presence in Forge Control. She reports an anomalous reading in Quantum Forge 3 that might relate to your investigation of the Vigilance. Inform her I'm on my way, Jeb responded, downloading the analysis results to his secure portable system. The quantum forges occupied a separate section of the shipyard, isolated from the main production hangars by multiple security barriers and specialized containment fields. Here, under the most stringent controls, the crystalline matrices that form the cores of night vessels were grown, a process that combined advanced materials science with quantum manipulation techniques that remained classified even after generations of use. Chief Engineer Victory met him at the entrance to Forge Control, her expression betraying excitement beneath professional composure. "Good morning, sir. You'll want to see this immediately." She led him directly to the monitoring station for Forge 3, where a holographic representation showed the quantum matrix currently under development. Jeb's eyes widened behind his helmet visor. The growing crystal displayed resonance patterns, remarkably similar to those he'd observed in the Vigilance's core. The same tendency toward tertiary pattern development. "When did this start?" he asked, his quantum spurs leaving sharper trails that reflected his intensified focus. "Approximately 3 hours ago," Victory replied. "The technicians notified me when the deviation from standard growth parameters reached 15%, but the crystal stability indicators remain well within acceptable ranges." Jeb nodded, studying the readings closely. "This confirms what I suspected. Have we received new resonant materials from Dodson 4 recently?" "Yes, sir. The shipment that arrived yesterday included quantum-resonant alloys destined for the Forge systems. We began integration into Forge 3's material stream during night shift. And the quality assessment showed they were 8% above minimum specifications," Jeb recalled from yesterday's briefing. "I need to see the detailed composition analysis." Victory pulled up the relevant data, displaying charts that broke down the atomic and quantum properties of the received materials. Jeb compared these with the historical records of previous shipments, his night-enhanced perception identifying subtle differences that standard instrumentation might miss. "There," he indicated, highlighting a particular quantum resonance signature within the material, "the trace luminon patterns are shifted toward the upper frequency range compared to standard specifications. Not enough to trigger rejection protocols, but sufficient to influence crystalline growth patterns." Victory studied the highlighted data, her expression shifting from curiosity to understanding. This could explain the accelerated personality development in the Vigilance, and potentially in future vessels constructed with cores from this material batch. "Exactly," Jeb confirmed. "And it might relate to the 3 previous instances I've identified over the past 5 years. He transmitted his earlier findings to her console. All sourced from Dodson 4, all showing similar resonance characteristics, though never as pronounced as what we're seeing now. "Should we halt Forge operations?" Victory asked. Adjust the material stream to compensate? Jeb considered this carefully, his quantum spurs leading contemplative patterns as he weighed the implications. No. The cores produced with these characteristics have all performed exceptionally well in active service. Let's continue normal operations but establish enhanced monitoring protocols. I want detailed resonance mapping at every stage of development. He turned to face the quantum forge itself, visible through a reinforced observation window, its interior glowing with the controlled energies that shaped raw materials into the sophisticated quantum matrices at the heart of night vessels. And contact Dodson 4, he added. I want to know if there have been any changes to their mining or refinement processes that might explain the shifted resonance patterns. Frame it as technical curiosity rather than concern. Victory nodded. I'll handle it personally. Should we notify Night Command about these findings? I'll prepare a formal report after we gather more data, Jeb decided. At this point, we're observing a potentially beneficial variation rather than a problem. No need to trigger a full review protocol until we understand it better. As they exited Forge Control, Jeb's command comm chimed with a priority signal. Night Captain Wheatley, this is Station Security. We have a situation at Docking Bay 17 that requires your immediate attention. Nature of the situation? Jeb inquired, already moving toward the nearest transport tube. Unscheduled arrival of Night Command Vessel Dauntless, came the response. Colonel Harrison requesting emergency docking clearance and immediate conference with you. Security protocols Alpha 7 in effect. Jeb exchanged a quick glance with Victory. Alpha 7 indicated classified Night Command business requiring maximum discretion. Granted. Direct them to the secured conference facility adjacent to my office. I'm en route. As he stepped into the transport tube, his quantum spurs left trails that reflected a shift in his mental state, from technical problem-solving to Night Command protocols. Something significant had brought a senior night officer to the shipyard without prior notice, and under security conditions that suggested sensitivity beyond routine military matters. Computer, access construction status for all vessels currently in production. He instructed his helmet's internal systems during the brief journey. Prepare summary for immediate review. By the time he reached the executive level, Jeb had refreshed his knowledge of every project's current status, potential issues, and timeline projections. Whatever Colonel Harrison's unexpected visit concerned, he would be prepared to address it with complete information. The secured conference facility was a windowless room deep within the administrative section, its walls embedded with quantum dampening technology that prevented any possibility of electronic surveillance. As Jeb entered, his quantum spurs automatically synchronized with the room's security systems, confirming his identity more definitively than any conventional authentication method. Colonel Harrison stood as Jeb entered, a tall, weathered knight whose quantum spurs left sharper, more defined trails than most. His service record was legendary within the knight community, 30 years on the frontier, commanding vessels against threats ranging from pirates to the mysterious silence incursions at the edge of human space. Knight Captain Wheatley, Harrison greeted him with formal precision, offering the traditional salute between knights of different ranks. Colonel Harrison. Jeb returned the salute equally formally. Welcome to Wheatley Orbital Shipworks. How may we serve Night Command today? Harrison gestured for Jeb to take a seat, his expression grave beneath the traditional Stetson that senior knights wore when not in combat gear. I've come directly from the Coriolis sector. 3 days ago, we lost contact with the Determined and her escort vessels while they were investigating unusual quantum signatures near the Silence boundary. Jeb's attention sharpened immediately. The Determined was one of the most advanced night cruisers in service, commissioned from his own shipyard just 2 years earlier. Lost contact as in communications failure, or lost contact as in confirmed destruction? Unknown, Harrison replied grimly. Final transmission reported encounter with an unidentified vessel of unprecedented configuration. Quantum fluctuations interrupted the signal before tactical assessment could be completed. He activated a secure data crystal, projecting a fragmented recording above the conference table. The holographic display showed a night cruiser, recognizable as the Determined from its distinctive hull configuration, facing what appeared to be a ship of completely unfamiliar design. Before any meaningful details could be discerned, the image dissolved into quantum static. "That's all we have," Harrison continued. "3 vessels, including one of our most advanced cruisers, gone without explanation. Knight Command has initiated Protocol Vigilant Response." Jeb nodded, understanding the implications immediately. Protocol Vigilant Response was enacted only when facing unknown threats of potentially significant magnitude, directing all Knight resources toward assessment and countermeasure development. "What does this mean for our production schedule?" he asked, already calculating potential adjustments to resource allocation and construction priorities. "Command is accelerating the commissioning timeline for all vessels currently in late-stage production," Harrison stated. "Particularly the Vigilance, Remembrance, and Defiance. We need them operational within 60 days, instead of the scheduled 90. "Jeb's quantum." Spurs left thoughtful patterns as he considered this request. "The Vigilance could be ready within the accelerated timeline with minimal compromises to testing protocols. The Remembrance is approximately 10 days behind that schedule, and the Defiance would require significant resource reallocation to meet a 60-day commissioning window." Harrison nodded, unsurprised by the precise assessment. "Make it happen, Captain. Whatever resources you require will be prioritized. The situation at the Silence Boundary suggests we may be facing something beyond our current experience." "May I ask a direct question, Colonel?" Jeb inquired, his tone carefully measured. "You may. Are we looking at another collector incursion or something else entirely?" Harrison's expression darkened. "The quantum signatures detected before contact was lost don't match any known collector configurations. The preliminary analysis suggests," he hesitated fractionally, "suggests technology with similarities to our own quantum systems, but vastly more advanced." This revelation sent a chill through Jeb that his Knight training couldn't entirely suppress. Knight quantum technology was already at the cutting edge of human scientific achievement. Something significantly beyond it implied either an extraordinarily advanced alien civilization or human development that had somehow progressed along alternate paths unknown to current Knight Command. "I understand," Jeb said simply. "We'll implement the accelerated schedule immediately. My chief engineer was just reviewing an interesting quantum resonance pattern in the Vigilance's core that might actually benefit us under these circumstances." Harrison's eyebrow raised slightly. "Explain." Jeb briefed the colonel on the unusual tertiary resonance patterns, the potential connection to Dodson 4's quantum resonant materials, and the historical performance of vessels exhibiting similar characteristics. As he spoke, Harrison's expression shifted from concern to thoughtful consideration. "This could be significant," the colonel acknowledged when Jeb had finished, "especially if we're facing unknown quantum-based technology. Vessels with more developed personalities have historically demonstrated superior adaptation to unexpected tactical situations." "My assessment exactly," Jeb confirmed. "I propose maintaining the current forge parameters rather than attempting to normalize the resonance patterns. The Vigilance is already showing promising development, and the cores currently in production for the Remembrance and Defiance might benefit from the same characteristics." Harrison nodded decisively. "Approved. I'll notify Command of this development and its potential tactical implications." He paused, studying Jeb with a calculating expression. "There's one more thing, Captain. The Vigilance will need a Knight commander familiar with its unique quantum signature, someone who has interfaced directly with its core during development." Jeb immediately understood the implication. "Sir, with respect, my duties are here at the shipyard. I haven't commanded a vessel in active service since the collector engagement at New Madrid, where you earned your captaincy despite being the youngest Knight in the squadron." Harrison finished for him. "Your record speaks for itself, Wheatley, and your direct resonance with the Vigilance's core creates a connection that would normally take months for a new commander to establish." "My family," Jeb began. "We'll remain here, safe within the shipyard's protection," Harrison assured him. "This is a temporary assignment. Evaluate the vessel's capabilities under actual operational conditions, establish baseline performance parameters with its unique quantum signature, then return to oversee production of the remaining vessels." The request, though phrased diplomatically, carried the unmistakable weight of Knight Command authority. Jeb's quantum spurs left conflicted patterns across the floor as he weighed his responsibilities to the shipyard, to his family, and to the wider defense of human space. "How long?" he finally asked. 30 days maximum," Harrison replied. "Just long enough to complete shakedown procedures and performance verification near the new Topeka defense perimeter. No frontier deployment, no engagement with unknown forces until you return to the shipyard." Jeb nodded slowly, decision made. "I'll need to brief my executive team and make arrangements with my family." "Of course," Harrison agreed, standing to signal the end of their meeting. "The Dauntless will remain docked for 12 hours to transfer priority materials and updated security protocols. Your departure aboard the Vigilance is scheduled for 7 days from now, assuming acceleration of the final testing phases." As they exited the secure conference room, Jeb's mind was already restructuring shipyard operations to accommodate the accelerated schedule. Resources would need reallocation, shift patterns adjusted, quality control protocols streamlined without compromising essential safety measures. And beyond the technical challenges lay the more personal concern, explaining to Abigail and the children that he would be departing on a night vessel for the first time since before Thomas was born. His quantum spurs left troubled patterns as he considered how this temporary command might affect the careful balance he'd maintained between his night responsibilities and family life. Yet, beneath these immediate concerns lay a deeper question. What unknown force had neutralized a night cruiser and its escorts without warning? And what implications might this have for the vessels his shipyard was rushing to complete? The answers would come in time. For now, his duty was clear. Accelerate production, prepare the Vigilance for commissioning, and temporarily return to active night service. The Wheatley legacy of innovation and service would continue, adapting to new challenges just as it had for 3 generations. His quantum spurs left determined blue trails as he headed toward the production control center to begin implementing the new directives. Whatever threat lurked at the edge of human space, the vessels produced under his supervision would stand as humanity's shield, just as his grandfather had envisioned when founding the shipyard decades ago. And whether commanding from the bridge of the Vigilance or overseeing construction from the shipyard's control center, Jeb would honor that legacy in his own way, building the future while protecting the present, one quantum-enhanced vessel at a time. The following days passed in a blur of activity as the shipyard adjusted to the accelerated production schedule. Jeb moved through the massive facility like a force of nature, his quantum spurs leaving trails that burned brighter with purpose as he personally inspected critical systems, authorized resource reallocations, and supervised the final integration of the Vigilance's quantum core with its command systems. Workers throughout the shipyard responded to the accelerated timeline with determined efficiency, many volunteering for additional shifts when they learned of the potential threat at the Silence boundary. The distinctive silhouette of Knight, Captain Wheatley in his full suit with Stetson helmet, became an ever-present sight throughout the production hangars, moving from one critical system to another with tireless energy. On the 5th day of this intensified schedule, Jeb stood in the Vigilance's bridge as the final calibration of its command systems neared completion. The dusty white vessel had been moved from its construction hangar to the commissioning dock, where specialized technicians worked around the clock to prepare it for its unexpectedly early departure. "Quantum interface alignment at 98% and rising," reported Lieutenant Hogg from the tactical station. Neural response latency dropping steadily, approaching optimal parameters ahead of projected timeline. Jeb nodded, observing the readings from his position at the command chair. a specialized seat incorporating quantum-resonant materials that would allow a night commander to interface directly with the vessel's systems through their spurs. His own were currently synchronized with the bridge systems, allowing him to perceive the ship's operational status in ways that went beyond standard instrumentation. The tertiary resonance patterns are stabilizing nicely, he noted, sensing the quantum fluctuations directly through his spurs. Core personality development is approximately 300% ahead of standard metrics for this stage. Chief Engineer Victory looked up from her console with professional satisfaction. The modifications to the command interface are adapting to the accelerated development. Neural pathway optimization is exceeding expectations. She paused, adding with unusual informality, "She likes you, Captain." The personification of night vessels was common among experienced shipbuilders. Recognizing the quasi-organic nature of the quantum matrices that formed their cores, and in this case, Victory's assessment aligned with Jeb's own perceptions. The Vigilance was responding to his quantum signature with unusual synchronicity, the neural interfaces adapting to his thought patterns more rapidly than any vessel he'd previously commanded. "Let's hope that translates to operational effectiveness," he replied, though privately he shared her assessment. Something about this particular vessel's quantum pattern resonated with his own in ways that technical specifications couldn't fully capture, a compatibility that Night Command had clearly recognized when assigning him temporary command. His comm unit chimed with a personal message. Abigail, requesting his return to their quarters when possible. They'd had precious little time together since Colonel Harrison's arrival, with Jeb working extended shifts to meet the accelerated deadlines while simultaneously preparing for his temporary command assignment. "Continue calibration sequence," he instructed the technical team. "I'll return in 2 hours for the final neural interface testing." As he made his way back to the residential ring, Jeb found himself reflecting on the dual nature of his current situation. For the first time in nearly a decade, he would be commanding a night vessel in active service, returning to the role he'd been trained for since his selection at age 17. Yet this time, he departed not as a single knight focused solely on his mission, but as a husband and father with responsibilities that extended beyond Night Command protocols. The door to the family quarters slid open at his approach, revealing Abigail sitting alone in the living area, a collection of datapads spread across the coffee table before her. "The kids?" he asked, removing his helmet as he entered. "School field trip to the agricultural ring," she explained. "They'll be back in a few hours." She gestured to the datapads. "I've been reviewing your departure arrangements." Jeb nodded, setting his helmet aside and joining her on the couch. His quantum spurs left subdued trails, reflecting his mixed emotions about the temporary assignment. "Command has confirmed 30 days maximum. The Vigilance will undergo shakedown procedures within the new Topeka defense perimeter, then conduct extended sensor trials near the outer system boundary." Abigail studied him with the perceptiveness that came from years together. "You are conflicted about this assignment." It wasn't a question but an observation, one that cut directly to the heart of his internal struggle. "Part of me welcomes the opportunity to command again," he admitted, "to experience firsthand how the innovations we've developed perform under actual operational conditions. And the other part," she prompted gently, "doesn't want to leave you and the kids, even temporarily." He reached for her hand. "Doesn't want to disrupt the balance we've built here." Abigail squeezed his hand, her expression understanding rather than accusatory. "It's a temporary assignment, Jeb. The kids and I can manage for 30 days. She gestured toward the datapads. "I've already arranged to reduce my teaching schedule at the education center so I can be here when they return from school. Michael understands you'll miss a few of his soccer games, but promises to record them for you to watch when you return." The simple practicality of her approach, addressing the logistics of his absence rather than dwelling on emotional reactions, was characteristic of their partnership. As the daughter of a night engineer, she had grown up understanding the unpredictable nature of night service and the occasional sacrifices it required. "And Thomas?" Jeb asked. knowing his eldest son's particular attachment to their evening discussions of quantum technology. A smile touched Abigail's lips. Is absolutely thrilled that his father will be commanding the vigilance. He's already told everyone at school and has started a detailed model of the ship for his room. Her expression grew more serious. He understands you're coming back, Jeb. They all do. Relief washed through him at this reassurance. His quantum spurs left calmer patterns across the floor as some of his internal tension eased. I've arranged for Lieutenant Hogg to continue his technical education while I'm gone. He's surprisingly good with children for a tactical specialist. We'll be fine, Abigail assured him once more. The real question is whether you'll be fine. It's been nearly a decade since you commanded a vessel in active service. Jeb considered this thoughtfully. The principles haven't changed, though the technology has advanced considerably. The Vigilance is more responsive, more adaptive than any vessel I previously commanded. His quantum spurs left briefly brighter trails as he added, and there's something about its resonance patterns that feels right, compatible with my own quantum signature in ways that are difficult to quantify. Abigail nodded, unsurprised. That's why Command selected you specifically for this shakedown cruise. They recognize the unique bond you've established with the vessel during its construction. She paused before asking directly, are you concerned about the unknown threat that triggered this accelerated schedule? Concerned, yes. Alarmed, no. Jeb replied carefully. Night vessels disappearing near the silence boundary is troubling, but not unprecedented. We've faced similar situations before and developed appropriate responses. What he didn't articulate, though Abigail likely intuited, was the unusual nature of this particular disappearance. A vessel showing quantum signatures similar to night technology but more advanced had implications that extended beyond typical frontier threats. It suggested either a radical evolution of human technology outside Night Command's knowledge, or an entirely new form of quantum-based civilization capable of neutralizing night vessels without warning. Either possibility carried profound implications for the vessels his shipyard produced and the defensive strategies they were designed to implement. Just promise me one thing, Abigail said, interrupting his thoughts. Anything. Remember that your primary mission is evaluation and return. Leave the heroics to the regular frontier knights. Her expression softened. We need you back here, overseeing the shipyard and teaching Thomas about quantum resonance patterns. Jeb smiled, drawing her closer. I promise. 30 days maximum. Then I'm back to being the shipyard's night captain rather than the Vigilance's commander. As they sat together, planning for his temporary absence and discussing how best to prepare the children, Jeb's quantum spurs left patterns that reflected his gradual reconciliation of his dual responsibilities. To Night Command and to his family, to the defense of human space and to the specific humans who meant most to him personally. In 2 days he would depart aboard the Vigilance, temporarily returning to active night service for the first time since assuming full control of the shipyard. The vessel under his command would carry not just his temporary crew and the advanced technology his facility had developed, but also the unique weekly approach to night service, balancing tradition with innovation, military precision with family values. Whatever challenges awaited during those 30 days, Jeb would face them with both the discipline of night training and the perspective of a husband and father with reasons beyond duty to return safely. His quantum spurs left determined trails across the floor, their blue patterns reflecting not just his night identity, but the full complexity of the man who wore them. Shipbuilder and commander, innovator and traditionalist, knight and family man, all parts of the legacy he carried forward, quantum fire marking his path into an uncertain future. Thank you, channel member Wes Davis, for making this video possible. Thank you for listening to this story. I hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to leave this video a like and subscribe if you want to see more stuff like this. Video shares, memberships, and super thanks help the channel grow as well, so feel free to partner with this channel in that way as we grow. With that all said, thank you again for listening to the story, and thank you for your time. On the left side of your screen are some videos I think you might be interested in. I hope to see you in the next one.